Story 1. There was an episode of This American Life where a woman did this, but back in the day, like the 1960s or early 1970s. There were seating charts or something in the dining room, so she couldn't sneak in to eat, and things that she assumed would be open most of the night, like bars, weren't. She lived on a lot of bar garnishes and had to pretend she was a drunk who kept passing out in the lounge. It was a lot less fun than she thought it would be, with very little sleep and cleaning herself up in public bathrooms while worrying she would be caught doing so at any time. She had to sneak back into her own country because she hadn't brought a passport. Story 2. I worked for Carnival. We will find you. We know you're on the ship. And we all want you to get off so I can take a short nap before I have to do it all over again in a few hours. Story 3. I don't know if this counts, but on the last night of a cruise, my friends and I got really drunk. Well, I don't know how, but I ended up somewhere passengers shouldn't be, in a supply closet, I believe. The ship had docked, and there was a 2-hour search for me. Still drunk. I couldn't find a way to get out of the room where the supply closet was because the door was locked. The crew thought I was trying to sneak another ride, but after reviewing the cameras, they could clearly tell I was nowhere near sober. So they let me go on my way with a good laugh. To this day, I still don't remember making my way down there. Story 4. Not me, but a couple decided to hide to try to get another week out of their holiday. This was while we were halfway through our holiday, so we heard it all. Dozens of announcements calling for them or anyone who had seen them were made throughout the day. Their rooms were searched, and everything they owned in that room was seized. The ship left port late by about 90 minutes, but they were eventually found and escorted off the ship when the crew decided to check the identity of every passenger on board. Story 5. Wow, I can actually kind of answer that. Okay, so it was not a cruise but a ferry. Also, we didn't hide on purpose. It was the ferry from Souris, Prince Edward Island, to the Isles de la Madeleine, Quebec, Canada. A 12-hour ride. We embarked at 2 a.m. and found a very quiet spot to sleep. We slept through the landing, and no one woke us up because no one actually saw us. When we woke up, we saw the islands going away from us. Result: we spent 36 hours on that boat. Sorry for my bad English. Story 6. You may enjoy a listen to the stowaway episode of the podcast Criminal. It's not someone who just didn't leave, but someone who plotted to go on a cruise without paying. It's a good listen. Story 7. It is all electronic card swipe now, everyone monitored all the time. All of the jokes and scrapes of being a stowaway, one step ahead of the steward, are in the past now. Story 8. I used to be in the United States Coast Guard. We had this happen a few times in Miami. They were all escorted off the ship. Typically, the police handle the situation, but if a stowaway was discovered while still in the 3 to 12-mile range, we would render assistance once they were apprehended by the onboard law enforcement. Story 9. I don't know if this counts, but my dad got locked in a toilet cubicle on a ferry to France, and it took several people to find him. The toilet was right out of the way, and you couldn't hear him yelling, even right outside in the corridor, because the doors were so massive. I guess he could have gone immediately back to England. Could have become a ship toilet hermit. Story 10. Late to the party, but I can chime in and further add proof if needed. I worked for Carnival for 5 years, specifically in debarkation. Additionally, I worked for Disney Cruise Line and Princess Cruise Line. Here's what happens. We give you a card upon check-in, and that card is scanned the minute you step on board. Additionally, it is scanned when you leave the ship for either complete debarkation or excursions. At the end of your cruise, debarkation starts around 7 a.m. By 10 a.m., we receive a list of people who have not yet had their card scanned. It's impossible to get off the boat without getting your card scanned, unless you jump into the water. Haha. Then a search begins to get you off the ship so we can board new passengers, approximately 2,200 to 2,600 people. We do not start boarding new passengers until every card from the previous voyage has been scanned. In my experience, nobody ever waits and tries to hide. If you do take a cruise, book a flight that's a little bit later in the morning and go with the latest checkout time you can. Many people aim for debarking around 7 to 9 a.m. Literally over 1,700 people will be waiting in lines that'll take well over an hour to get through. Instead of waiting in line for an hour, stay on board, eat breakfast, take some last-minute photos, and then when your time comes, just leave, go through customs, and be on your way. I'm the go-to person for all cruising tips, haha. I'm starting my commute to work, but I'll be sure to answer all questions when I get there. All right, I'm back. Time to answer these questions. I'll still answer questions if you message me. Also, thanks for all the kind words, and it's been a fun thread. Story 11. In 1991, I took a ferry from Brindisi, Italy, to Corfu, Greece. A guy I met in line assumed I didn't speak English, and he was telling his friend that they needed to smoke all of their marijuana because they heard that the border agents in Greece were strict. We became fast friends. I had alcohol too. I was going to sleep in the open air on the deck, but a French-Canadian girl with a mustache kept trying to crawl into my sleeping bag with me. It came to a point where I knew my only chance to get some sleep and get away was to rent a room, so I went and paid the extra money for a room to Corfu. They were going to wake me up when we reached port. I woke up to the pursers knocking on my door. I let them in and said, "Corfu." "No," they said. I was a bit annoyed. "Why are you waking me up if we're not at my port?" I tried to convey that, and then they said, "No Corfu." "Huh? Corfu gone." "What?" I found myself being escorted up to some police-like office with the pursers looking angry at me, but I finally got to somebody who spoke English and started expressing frustration for not waking me up. I guess they didn't like my attitude because I was booted off on mainland Greece with no way to get to Corfu, with a raging hangover, and I'm about to relieve myself. I started asking around the port how I could get to Corfu and where I could find a bathroom. Some random Greek guy took pity on me and helped me out and realized that a rust bucket that was just about to leave was heading there. I rushed over and paid, and it wasn't a tourist boat, it was the boat the locals take to work on the island. I made a beeline for the bathroom, and a guy stopped me. No using the bathroom while in port. I had to wait until they got past the breakwater. At this point, my muscles had been getting a good hour or so of a workout. I was sweating profusely, and the hangover was really kicking into high gear. I curled up in the fetal position next to the big vent until we were nearing the breakwater and I headed towards the bathroom. We finally passed, and the guy opened the door. You know that sense of relief you get when you're finally at a bathroom after more than an hour of clenching? It was palpable. I got into the bathroom and was hit with a wall of hot stench. No worries. I could do the old trick to close my nostrils. I was on a mission. I opened the stall door and, no toilet. This is Greece. It's a hole in the floor with 2 spots for your feet. At this point, something in the back of my brain was wondering why there was a mess all over the floor. But too many other things were going on in my brain at the time, so I simply chalked it up to the Mediterranean locals having unique abilities. And that's when the waves hit. My pants were down, I was bending down to do the squat, and I heard it. Glurg, glurg, glurg. Now, since I had just begun the squat, my eyes happened to be perfectly aligned with the hole. And there I saw a black liquid mass working its way up from the deep like an angry creature. Those thoughts from the back of my brain came rushing forward into the spotlight. Now I was strongly suspecting that the locals didn't have unique abilities. There was a perfectly valid reason that there was a mess all over the floor and I was witnessing it. I pulled my pants up and burst out the stall just as the morass arose from every stall, nipping at my heels as I skipped over the bulkhead and out the door. I returned to my fetal position on the bow, clenching and shivering for the 3-hour trip to Corfu. Story 12. I am a stand-up comic who works on cruise ships 3 to 4 months out of the year. Guests who take forever to leave are frustrating. Employees of the ship can't leave until every last guest has exited the vessel. So if a guest is taking their time to leave or hiding, they are potentially keeping over 100 employees from going home. Many of the employees are on the ship for about 8 months, so every second counts when they just want to get off and start heading home. Please get off the boat promptly. Story 13. Ships tend to have really good tracking of their passengers. There are security cameras everywhere, and when you disembark, they give the ship a thorough inspection. All the passenger areas are easy to observe and have no hiding places, and if a passenger were to be in a crew area, it happened every now and then, we would notice immediately. I've never had passengers try to stow away, but I've definitely seen crew run away from the ship. This mostly happens in American ports. Personally, when I was working on ships, I couldn't wait to get off them every time I saw land. Why people cruise to begin with is beyond my comprehension. Story 14. A little different. I was going through a really hard bout with depression in 2012 and really had nothing going on in life besides an overnight job at a gym. My parents decided to do a family cruise in March as our Christmas present. I was actually planning on saying goodbye to my family at the end of the trip and just getting off at the last island and not getting back on. Then I found out the cruise company would alert local authorities that I didn't get back on. I wanted to just island skip for a while instead of backpacking through Europe to do some thinking and adventuring. I didn't want to end up in some unpleasant Caribbean jail. Story 15. My friend did this. He can't handle his drink, and we were on a mini cruise from Newcastle to Amsterdam. After a few drinks, he loses it, rips a table from the wall, and throws it away. He took his top off, as well as another friend's top, and threw them overboard, shouting "Way!" He was quickly sent to the brig and had his passport confiscated, meaning he couldn't get back on the boat after our day in Amsterdam. So he tried to hide under the bed. According to his story, he couldn't fit, so his feet were sticking out a bit, and he said he got caught straight away. They threw him off, and we never saw him that day. Imaginably, when we got back on the boat to no friend under the bed, we were concerned. We chose his closest friend to call his dad to say, "We have lost your son," laughing, and his answer was, "Oh, I know. We booked him a flight." Turns out he ventured off the boat in a panic, somehow managed to find a British embassy, and explained his situation. Not sure how, but they organized him to fly home without a passport. Every time I see him, I ask him to tell me the story again for a laugh. Story 16. An ex-girlfriend of mine was an onboard cruise photographer. I remember asking her something similar before, and she told me they swipe on and swipe off everyone at every stop every time. She did say that she'd known people to try and stow away, but basically, it turns into a massive Easter egg hunt to find the person. The liner she was on always awarded the staff member who found the person with some sort of bonus, but she never told me what it was. I remember her saying that someone caused a ship to be something like 6 hours late to leave because they'd done such a good job at hiding. Eventually, they were found or gave themselves up and were arrested by port authorities. Story 17. Every cruise ship has an employee section that includes club and bar areas. I once got access after hitting on a bartender. Beers were $1 and everyone was wasted. That's an area I would look into. You'll never find it on your own. Definitely need an employee to show you how to get in. Story 18. While I won't rule it out as an impossibility nowadays, it would be extremely difficult. First, you're scanned on and off the ship so they'd know you never got off. So now you're hiding on the ship. What are you going to do? You won't be able to get into or back into your room. You won't be able to eat or drink on some of the cruises since you'll need a valid key card or wristband. You'll be carrying all your stuff around since you'll have nowhere to store it. You might make it to the first port without being caught, but then you'd probably want off, and when you get scanned off, you're busted. I'd say it's 99.9% likely you spend your stowaway cruise in the ship's jail cell until you get back to home port. Story 19. I was on a ship traveling from Portugal to China. We took a wrong turn somewhere and landed on a remote island. Now the captain is enslaving all the locals. Story 20. I found some crew clothing in the laundry and put it on. The crew was changing out at the last stop, so nobody would recognize my new face. In the 2 days between the ending of one round and the start of the next leg, I found myself enjoying the nods from other crew members and a level of respect I wasn't used to having dressed as a normal passenger. I decided that I would chat up some of the bar staff and see if I'd have any luck getting free drinks. After a few beers, this new bartender came on. An old British guy. Looked like he'd seen some stuff. He had a nickname for everyone. Governor, friend, pal, comrade. I guess he'd really traveled a lot. He kept serving me drinks with a sly wink, like from one old sea dog to another. It came time to settle my bill, as the ship was prepping for departure, and when I went to give him money, sure enough, he told me I didn't have to pay. "No, sir," he said. "This one's on me, Captain, no trouble at all. Good luck getting us out of dock." And he pointed over my shoulder with his chin. I turned around, and the rest of the bridge crew was there with a security detail. Story 21. Day 247. They still do not realize. I have been living off seawater and Ritz crackers for the past month. I cannot let them see me in the cafeteria. People tell me all the time to just leave the boat, but none of them understand. Using the quarters I find on the ground, I was finally able to pay my cell phone bill again today. I got a text from some guy named Boss, telling me that he is going to put me in a thing of fire. Whatever, probably insane. I got a scam text from some guy named Jane calling me husband, and from the police. Regardless, I am probably going to fry up the phone battery for more fire today. I sometimes wonder what life is like outside the ship, but quickly dismiss those thoughts after I realize that there is no such thing as living outside the ship. Around day 50 or 60, people in blue coats began to harass me, saying that I must go or they are going to find me or something. They are probably just heroin addicts, though they scared me enough to go incognito until they are gone.